Welcome everyone to monthly newsletter ISSIP Ambassador Interview Series. Cecilia Lee here from ISSIP, and we have an ISSIP Ambassador, Biplav Srivastava, today here. Hi, Biplav. Thanks for joining us. Could you introduce yourself to the ISSIP community?
Sure. Thanks, Cecilia, for having me. I am Biplav Srivastava, and I am a professor at University of South Carolina and at their AI Institute. So after my PhD in Arizona from Arizona State University and a brief stint with the startup, I joined IBM Research in 2001 and have been working on a variety of AI and services research projects since. I have been very fortunate to see that these work have led to scientific as well as business impact. After nearly 20 years, I joined the academia. Within research also, in 2018, that's about 18 years into my work, I moved from research to corporate, where I got to see at my employers at the corporate how they apply AI on their own business problems. So that gave me a real perspective on a multinational and company using it for corporate strategies and such, how they are using technology. Today, my group is working on AI techniques for society. So we look at not only on theory, where we are working on neurosymbolic methods, we are also working on usability, which is how to make AI trustable. And finally, we are working on applications. So how AI can be used for infrastructure, like making water and helping people make good decisions related to water, for example, and other areas like education, transportation. That would be a brief introduction.
That is very interesting, Biplav, and I know that you worked across industry and academia, which is brilliant. I am very curious to hear more about how we can, mitigate unintended consequences of AI, given the fact that you're working on AI techniques for good, right? So if you want to use or maximize AI's benefits for society, how can we mitigate the unintended consequence of AI?
Sure. So I think that's a very fascinating and important question. So to answer this question, we have to look around and by analogy, look at how we have made different other things safer. For example, the food, okay? Food, if you look 300, 500 years back, food was locally produced and consumed. And when it started getting transported, then people needed guidance on how we can actually, is this food safe? Has it been actually spoiled by distance and time and so on? That's the time when packaging started and people started putting food in a transparent packages so that you can see the internals, right? And there is no adulteration. So the transparency was leading to consumers' confidence in the food quality. Today, regardless of what food you are eating, okay, and if you're going to a new culture, you may get a new dish. I may be traveling to Vietnam, I don't recognize the food, but I can ask questions about what's the protein, what's the fat content, what's the carbohydrate content, and I can decide whether I can consume this food. Okay. Mm-hmm. But the same thing, we cannot ask our AI services. You're using a translator, you're using a chatbot, you're using an image system, you are using a photo tagging system, so on, right? You cannot ask it, give me your labels. When is your behavior robust? When is it on the margins or fringes? When do you make mistakes? So you can't ask those questions. So transparency is one of the ways to do it. So I am actually working on, I've been pushing this idea since 2018 along with my collaborators and students on how we can test and rate AI services for trust. And trust is a multifaceted topic. It means things like fairness, it means information leakage, right? Are you handling my data properly and so on? So without consuming the AI services, training data or their source code. So I assume that we don't have the source code or the training data, but how can we test an AI system so that we can assign ratings and which have clear meaning so that the decision maker, the users, right, they can take informed decision. I
Mm.
don't claim arrogance that we will remove bias, okay? But I think we can use technology in a better way to support communication about the system of the AI systems. So that's the approach we are following here.
That is very interesting. And then also my another question is then like, how can we help people to trust AI better, right? Because you mentioned that like, as we train AI better and better, then we can help people to make an informed decision. But then in my research, also, I've done quite a bit of a research around like the human and AI interaction. And one of the research findings that I've got from my, a couple of experiments that I ran personally through my PhD was that funny thing is like people don't want to trust AI. Sometimes they're just afraid of it, looking at the uncanny valley phenomenon, like they said, okay, I don't want to use the AI services because, it's just not accurate enough. I can't trust it. It's not reliable. But then if it eventually offers really accurate services, like, to the extent that human can offer, then they say that, oh my God, that is really creepy. For example, is a Google duplex demo, right? How do you like, I would love to hear your perspective on that. Like, I think we are a very oxymoron creature, like we want to use reliable AI services, but at the same time, we don't want our intelligence to be overtaken by AI. What is your perspective on that?
Right. So I think when do we search, when do we trust a technology? What is our transition from being a disbeliever to a believer and so on, right? Uh, we, I think we should take the learning from social sciences, which has studied this extensively with technologies like electricity, with cars, with airplanes, and so on. Okay, so I think there is enough history and precedence of how to make technology trustable, okay, with people if we search for it. The thing is, we don't have to somehow go into the hyperbole that AI will solve the world's problem. We have to stay with the message that what is your problem and here is a technology and can it actually help you. Okay, so we don't try to impress people with the new terms and new technology, but we really try to make it relevant to people. So this is easier said than done. But the point is, trust is not something which you can ask you as a second person or this others, right, to actually do. It is earned. Okay, so trust is always earned.
Hmm.
You can say trust me, but people will not trust you just because you have said that, and maybe you have said 10,000 times, or you. So how do you earn trust? You earn trust by first being competent in whatever you say you will do. Okay. So for example, if it is a chatbot and you claim that it can understand, I can support a language in, I mean, conversation in natural language, you better be able to understand my accent, my language, my terms, right? If you don't understand that and you're forcing me to say in a particular manner, then you are not competent, right? The technology is not competent, so you're not earning my trust.
Hmm.
So the first dimension is competence,
Hmm.
right? The second the attribute is to be reliable. Now, by reliable is that, you know, every time you should be able to do it. Okay, there should be predictability. Okay, so for example, a bridge. When you cross a bridge, it is not the case that sometimes you cross it and sometimes you wait for an upgrade. Okay, but with the software, we assume that every 6 months there will be an upgrade. On a mobile phone, you expect an upgrade. Okay,
Mhm.
so you earn trust by being reliable and by being predictable. Okay,
Hmm.
so we have to really do be robust.
Mhm.
Software, especially information technology in general, but a software in particular has been notorious for not testing their work very well. The best testing happens when we are doing randomized controlled trial with medical equipments, with vaccines, and so on. there is no reason why the same cannot be done for AI technologies, especially if we aspire them to be used every day by everyone. Okay, so our testing has to improve, and and for reliability. So
Mhm,
I just mentioned first is competence, the
mhm.
second one would be reliability.
That's very interesting,
And,
competence and reliability. And is there
yeah.
any way that we can measure our humans' trust towards AI? I think that I haven't
Uh,
come up with the measurement scale.
so again, we can do this. So this is not answer which so first I would just like to conclude that there were other characteristics, but competence and reliability are the most common ones. The
Mhm,
third one I would say is upholding human values. Okay,
mhm,
uh, I cannot be using a technology which somehow I mean, so if as a basic value, right, human value, you
mhm,
would expect the technology or something to be respecting women and children, right? So I will not, as a person, use a technology which is not respecting to, women and children. Okay,
mhm,
so that's about it's a social thing, but I just want to kind of quickly complete. And there are books which talk about other characteristics, but I think these are the most important ones:
mhm.
competency, reliability, and trust and human values. Okay. Now coming to how do you measure trust? I would again draw on various ways that in other precedences, right? We have actually brought in trust. We have brought in trust in aeroplanes, in our cars, and in our electricity. How have we done that? In our electricity, we have done through standardization.
Mhm,
So first, no single party does it. It is a multi-stakeholder thing.
mhm,
Okay, academia is involved, industry is involved, policy is involved, the government is involved, citizens are involved. But there has to be a value that everyday people benefit from.
mhm,
Electricity, people saw that a lot of things were happening, but there was a lot of electrocution, and they standardized on switches and everything. Okay,
mhm.
so it came through, and then you measure by either the how much harm was happening and how much is the benefit happening. So trust for cars or like airplanes, right? Would you go on airplane A versus airplane B? That trust is measured by how many accidents you've had, right, in the last 10 years. So that's one way of doing it. And an airline which does not test along with its pilot, right, robustly, faces a flag. So that's a very big thing that you're not involving the end user as part of your testing, and surreptitiously you're introducing new technology.
Mhm.
Okay, that is the reliability, right? It's not. I mean, it was not about competence; it was about reliability. You did not inform people, and people don't like to be taken for granted. Okay, a phone which upgrades without your permission,
Yeah.
uh, you will not take it.
Yeah.
So a pilot without this thing, and no one will take a doctor who is because they're responsible, right? We
Mhm,
are responsible for when we are carrying our when we bring a fridge into our homes. As a father, I'm responsible for the whole family, right? There is social responsibility. So I will not bring something which I don't trust my family to use.
exactly.
So the trust is so. In summary, we measure trust. There are social ways and there are technological ways. We measure them by metrics, and there are enough metrics around that we can do it. There is precedence. So if there is inclination, there is a way.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. And also, I'm curious to hear, just given the fact that, you worked in both, at the intersection of industry and then academia. I just wanted to hear your perspective on how can we actually bridge the gap between these two? Because like, people who are working in, industry who want to get into academia and also some, vice versa. How can we bridge the gap?
Right. So uh, I think we definitely can bridge the gap, and we can do that by having a partnership of the equals, in the sense that what does the academia need and what does the industry need. So industry needs a continuous supply of good students, right? And because that's how I mean, you have new people, and new technologies and services are coming in. Academia, what it needs is to conduct research and teaching. It needs more data sets. It needs competitions, okay, and students, nothing energizes them more than challenges and prizes. So I think we should have more competitions uh, uh, which uh, which engage the students and the teachers with the industry. So that's one thing. I don't see a lot of service-based hackathons and competitions happening. So that would be my first thing. The second one is most of the industry has worked on problems of services in industries. There are a lot of services problems in academia also,
Definitely, yeah.
which are equally important. And there's a lot of money to be made. So team building, okay, forming teams to in response to any opportunity is a common thing which happens in industry. So there is a new potential client, and you want to have your sales and technical people assemble them and just send it off to the client, right? Similarly, in academia, there is a new funding opportunity. 2, 3 different researchers want to come together, and they want to see what's the idea and how they can actually come up with a viable proposal. So this thing about this problem I'm just mentioning, which is team formation, which is repeatedly happening, but it is as important in industry, but also in academia. Okay. So there are multiple problems in services problems. So I would say that if there was a more recognition of these services problems, and we would have industry look at those problems also, right? It could also, so today, when in academia, when people look at services problems, they are looking at industry's problem, but they don't look at academia's problems. And no industry or has benefited, or no, in no domain have people benefited when they look at someone else's problem. They don't use the technology to solve their own problem. So I think there is, so hackathons was one. Second was more realization on services problem in the university setting, and have both academia and university work on that.
Definitely, yeah. Definitely.
So those are two things which I feel are gaps. But other than that, I think industry has been very supportive of academia.
Oh, okay. That's great to hear that. Yeah, but I had a slightly different experience. So working in both industry and then academia, I just felt that the level of rigor appreciated by each sector was a very different, like in academia, definitely it has to be a bit scientific to a certain extent. Whereas in industry, you know what, let's just get it done and then generate the outcome first. So I saw a bit of a challenge actually working at the intersection. Cool. And you mentioned that, in the survey we ran last year, quite a long time ago, that as one of your suggestions to the ISSIP community, your question was, how can we increase our community by 10 times? I would love to hear your suggestions. How can we increase our community by 10 times and maximize our impact?
Sure. So I think to increase our impact by 10 times, we need to bring in new kind of people who are not closely associating themselves with the service industry right now. Okay. And one of them are the students. The students as in, so I deal with computer science students, so I'm going to use that as a reference point, but also working with other colleagues, students in other departments, other colleges, and so on. In education, in public health, and so on. Yeah, so that's what I do. So I think what we need is, we need to bring in educators and teachers into and from traditional engineering, but who are actually solving services problems. So we need to target them. The best way to target them are again by competitions or problems, and having rewards associated with them. So competitions at major conferences has been a very good way of kickstarting research. Okay. Closely related to that is a lot of resources to help reduce the entry barrier. So if you look at a typical paper in a researchers conference, in a services conference, what happens is this was done at a call center where we had access to so much of data and so on. Okay. But that's a very big entry barrier. So what's happening is researchers are working, people who are already working in services, they are not able to work on problems and the solutions cannot directly apply to something which the industry can use. Okay, so that's why having anonymized data sets and the problems which the community agrees, that would be really good. And then you are able to energize the academia onto it.
Great, awesome.
And the last one would be, I would want to engage the end users. Okay. So the end users are not students and this thing, but eventually, what is the Facebook for services like? Okay. So can there be a problem where we can crowdsource and get suggestions from people, everyday people who are, for example, the travel example I just said right earlier. Their self-help has been around, and most of the industries, they're blindly following it, whether it is an airline for baggage, for everything, right? Similarly for people in companies and everything. But I believe there is a time where we should actually do a critical analysis and see when self-help is helpful and when it is not. Now, this is the kind of thing where we can engage people, okay? And we can have the measurement. So it's a crowdsourcing experiment, okay? So an organization which earlier had a department, travel department, and now is doing self-help, right? It actually asks everyone, can you just report how much time are you put in your travel now? Okay. And you can just do a simple calculation because you know their salary, and you can simply do this. And it will immediately answer this question. Now, the problem is that people don't measure this, and you cannot improve something which you can't measure.
Definitely, yeah.
So I think engaging end users or common day people will really bring services to the next level. Right now, it is very attached to, we don't talk about services in government. We don't talk about services in universities or academia, two big markets in the economy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can totally agree with that. We have exactly about 8 minutes left. Before we close this call, do you have any final thoughts or comments to the ISSIP community?
Sure. So I think I will like to just mention one thing which is at first glance seems irrelevant, but I think it's very important, and you can see the connection. The services industry has been driven by economic theory of productivity. Let's improve productivity and let's go for it. But in productivity, again, just like you don't improve what you don't measure, right? We don't measure the green impact of services. I think it is with the climate change, we need to also look at how can we deliver services in a much more efficient manner. So a lot of the companies, they are actually building in chatbots and various technologies, which is great. Okay, but when service transformation we are doing, we should measure its green impact and look for whether it is worth saving. Okay, because you want sustainable business, you want sustainable services, places, and for sustainable services. I mean, look 300 years before, how were people are still living, they were doing services, and it was sustainable. Okay, so we need to think about sustainable services which has lesser impact on the climate. And I would say that there are progressive companies who have begun to do that, but we need to do more of it. And a simple example, AI systems are using pre-trained models, which are called foundation models, where a lot of energy is used in creating those uh, foundation models. So almost like for one foundation model, energy of almost a city for a year was consumed. Okay. So that kind of thing, if you are actually using it, right, you should actually associate with it. And whether technology is based on these things, what is the green impact before? And so that's the green. The second one is employment. Not the economic theory that we should just reduce productivity meant reducing the number of people employed. That is not sustainable. And there is, even from MIT and other places, there is economic theory which is calling out for productivity's definition to be changed. So we need to make our growth sustainable, both in terms of green as well as in terms of our workforce. Because with the increasing population, people, we need to give meaningful work, and at the same time, that should be sustainable and should be green. So I don't want companies to be not be profitable,
Mhm.
but those are the two aspects, right, which I think that the services in community should talk about.
Exactly.
We cannot be divorced from the environment and the society happening around us.
Definitely for sustainability, right? I mean, the services for the good.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, Biplav. It was so lovely to speak to you. And then thanks everyone for tuning in today. Take care.
Thank you, Cecilia, for having me.